for lesson 1.4, the first part, this part A, we're going to be looking at the same kind of quadratic expression or equation, and we are going to have A not equal to 1. So in previous lessons, our A coefficient here was 1. Okay, now we're going to be looking at coefficients that are not 1 for A. But let's just recall that when we factor any polynomial, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to C. Okay, that's this value here. But they have to add or sum to our B value. So in this case, we're looking for two numbers, some number times some number equals 10. But those same two numbers have to add to -7. So I think those two numbers are going to be -2 and -5. Because when we add -2 and -5, that's going to be -7. So in my parentheses, I'm going to have x minus 2 and x minus 5. And if you look at problem B has a negative sign in front, and we can't have any negatives, so we have to do what we would call multiply both sides by negative. If this was set to 0, we wouldn't have any change to the side that has a 0 on it. So basically what we're going to do is just change the sign in front of each term as if we have multiplied both sides by 0. Now we have to come up with two numbers that multiply to -24, and those same numbers have to add to -5. So the numbers I'm thinking of are going to be -8 and +3. Because when I multiply those two numbers, I get -24. But when I add them, I get -5. So my factored expression is going to be x minus 8 and x plus 3. And remember, I've said before that you can check to see if this is the correct answer by foiling. Just do the FOIL method and make sure that you arrive back at where you started. And where you started would actually be this expression, not the one that you started with, because we could not have that negative in the front there. Okay, so to get into some new stuff here, and I think we talked about this a little bit in class, so you should be sort of familiar with this big diagram over to the right with the x. There are some reminders here that at the top of the x we want to have a times c, and at the bottom of the x we want to have our b value. So if we take a look at our first expression, we have a 6 and we have a 5. So that means then that the number 30, a times c, is 30 here, and -17 is the b value. So you should be able to pick those things out of an expression. So the first step is multiply a times c, write the answer in the top, we did that. Write b in the bottom of the x. Step 3 says find factors of a times c that sum to b. Write these on the left and the right sides of the x. So which two numbers multiply to 30 but sum to -17? Well, I think that's going to be 15 and 2, but those both have to be negative. Okay, so -15 times -2 equals +30, but it sums to -17. Okay, and step 4, it says divide both factors on the left and the right, so we're going to divide both of these by the leading coefficient a. Well, a is 5. So I'm going to divide both by 5. Simplify or reduce the left and right sides. I'm reading step 5 here. Simplify or reduce the left and right sides of the x. Create two binomials using the bottom number as the coefficient of one binomial, and the top number as the constant of the same binomial. So if I reduce this down, I'm just going to draw another x right here. I still have 30. This ends up being -3 over 1. I want to make sure that we keep that bottom part there. And we can't do anything with this fraction here, but we're going to just rewrite it again. So the only thing that changed really was this one, but I think it's helpful. So, okay, the bottom, down here in our directions, it says it's going to be the coefficient of one binomial, And so that's going to be x, just a 1x, because we don't normally write the 1 in front. And the other one, 5, is going to be 5x. Okay, now this negative 2 has to stay with the 5. So that one I'm just going to write here. So it's going to be negative 2. And my negative 3 is going to go with the 1x over here. So negative 3. Now, the way that I would be able to check to see if my answer is correct is to use the FOIL method, as it says in step 6. Okay, so I'm going to try that right now. X minus 3 times 5x minus 2. Now if I do the first, I'm going to get 5x squared. My outside is going to be negative 2x. My inside is negative 15x. And my last, which is the negative 3 and the negative 2, ends up being positive 6. These two terms right here combine, and those will end up being negative 17x. And I'm just taking a peek right now to see what my original expression was, and it looks to me like we've got it. Okay, so that means then that we did good work and we actually got the two binomials that factor that original trinomial. Okay, on the back I'm going to do one more example. I know you saw a few in class, and then I did that first one on the first page. Refer back to those steps on the front of the page if you get lost when you're doing these on your own problems. Okay, so just make sure that you realize you need to finish the two problems on the bottom of this page here. So again, at the top we want to have a times c. So a is 3, c is negative 7. So that's going to be negative 21 when I multiply those two. And my b value is 20, and that's going to go down here in the bottom of the x. So in the left side, I'm going to have two, well, the left and right are the two numbers that multiply to negative 21 but add to positive 20. So I'm and 21 and negative 1 would fulfill that requirement, that multiply to negative 21 but add to positive 20. Now my next step is going to be to take each of those numbers and divide by 3, because a, our leading coefficient, needs to be the number that goes underneath the two factors. All right, and if I reduce or simplify my x, I'm going to end up with negative 21 here, 7 over 1 here, because 21 divided by 3 is 7. Make sure that you keep the 1 though, because that's important as part of your answer. Negative 1/3 and 20. All right, so if I'm going to make my two binomials here, the numbers in the bottom here on the denominators are going to be the values that go in front of the x. Okay, remember, anytime you have a 1, that's just going to be x by itself. And I have a positive 7 here, so that's going to be plus 7. And I have a negative 1 here, so that's going to be minus 1. So this should be my final answer, and if you ever feel like you need to check yourself on that, you can always FOIL to see if you can get back to your original expression. Now if you're having questions, having difficulty, please make sure you write some questions down, or just rewatch the video and see if you can pick up anything new a second time that you watch it.